What's going on, everybody? It is January 21st, 2025, daily log episode over NQ and the live stream view. So, today was another day of the New York session being very consolidated, and then the PM session running into higher objectives. And it's been like this probably for the last week or so, where we've seen the AM session very consolidated, and then we see the PM session / lunch really run towards objectives. I mean, if you look at last week on Thursday, last week on Wednesday, last week on Tuesday, last week on Friday, and now we're seeing it even on today. So this leads to the question, kind of like the main thing of the video is, how do you know when to trade PM session? Or how do you deal with the AM session consolidating, then the PM session running towards certain objectives or being a little bit more cleaner in price action? And to me, this comes down to personality, and also comes down to rules and the things you have set for yourself. Because for me personally, I have where I only trade the New York session. I don't look at anything else. Now, why is that? Well, for me personally, I've discovered through data collecting and seeing how things play out is I don't typically perform well in the PM session. I'm usually exhausted mentally. I also know that I would have a tendency to overtrade if I'm given the opportunity to be in front of the charts more often. I also know that I like my time outside of the charts. I don't want to be sucked into the charts every single day for hours on end. I want to have a time for myself, which is, the open to the end of the silver bullet. Maybe a little bit past that if I see the opportunity for it. But really, the end is there. And that's for me personally. So it goes into the question that I think a lot of people may be asking, well, how do I know when to trade PM session? How do I know that when the AM session is going to be consolidated? And how do I know when, the PM session is going to be the one delivering the move? Well, I think there may be a couple characteristics of it, but for me, what I've seen and learned from their ICT, I don't think there is. And, people may argue me on that and say, well, here's this, and this is what you could have looked for, and I don't really care. What it comes down to is discipline and understanding that, hey, I'm going to choose this time zone to work with, and I know this is the boundaries that I have, and if it doesn't deliver during it and it delivers in another part of it, then it is what it is. I can't look at the lens and say, well, I'm going to pick and choose only when price is going to trade perfectly, and I'm never going to choose the moments when it's not. Again, that's a perfectionist mindset, and this is a huge faulty that I ran into, and I see a lot of traders run into, especially on YouTube. The comments that I see, and either people trying to learn these concepts, is they're trying to look for the perfect model. They're trying to look for the perfect times to when to trade. They're always trying to avoid losing. They're always trying to avoid it. I was always trying to avoid it. I was always trying to find the perfect thing that would never make me lose, so I'd never have to have that feeling. Guess what? You guys have watched me the last 2 weeks. Last week was a losing week, and so far I've lost this week. Understand this is normal. For the ones that are not haters and trolls and look at the lens through this as losing, I know this is normal. I don't particularly really care. This is what consistent profitability looks like. I get the question all the time, what does consistent profitability look like? It's not winning all the time. You're going to see, and I'm glad this is happening, that eventually, if you sit with me long enough, I will end up winning. I'll go through winning streaks where all of this will be covered up, and people won't even be like, oh my God, you're such an amazing trader. How do I know that? That's not ego or boasting. I know this because I've been through it. Where you go through losing streaks, and either you start doubting yourself, and even being on social media, people also look at you and have comments and things to say. It's normal. And when you're going through winning streaks, nobody says anything about it. They just congratulate you, tell you you're the GOAT, you're amazing, and same with yourself. When you're going through these periods, the most important aspect of it all is to understand that you have to keep the composure that nothing has changed. It's simply you executing exactly what you had planned out for yourself. Even if you made mistakes, even if you thought you could have done something differently, it's still a part of your plan. It's a part of the risk management, if you're doing it correctly, that these things in terms of mistakes, or even if you're just taking losses, I executed all my losses when I look at it through a technical perspective. When I look at it through last week and even this week, that all the times that I've taken a trade, it's right at the point where price goes straight up into consolidation or basically high resistance or aimless trading. And I can't avoid that. I can't see further into the future than I already can with the knowledge that I have. So to me, that is a job well done. And I have to accept that and say, look, this is a part of the process. I mean, I can go on a rant and we'll go on to the technicals because you can get me going. But I love going through periods when I'm losing, and I like talking to people that are watching me because they're the ones that are going to learn the most if they're listening and not criticizing, because this is what it looks like. And we'll come back to this video when I've gone on a winning streak and all this is all covered up, and it's not even the point of covering up. It's just part of following the process. But when you can look back at through that perspective and go, oh yeah, like remember you're going through that losing streak and the market conditions weren't right and maybe I wasn't performing right, but then you go back to your winning streak, it's like, oh, all that was covered up and why was I worrying? Why was I freaking out? That's what consistent profitability looks like to me. And some people could be having amazing weeks right now and like, you're such a shit trader. To me, you can never look at somebody else's performance and try to negotiate your own, because you're all going to have different experiences based on your model and your own personality. So somebody else in the world can be having, even with these own concepts, could be having an amazing time trading right now and be like, how do you not see these moves? How are you not catching it? Because that's not me. That's not my personality. I know when the market moves in my favor and my model and the conditions I'm looking for, I will succeed. It could end up the rest of the week, I end up winning, and we'll go back to this video and be like, look, it was no big deal. So that's the whole point of composure and keeping that. So the reason I bring that up again is because of the PM session and always trying to look for that perfectionist mindset. It's a very faulty mindset to look for and strive for. Perfection is a moving target. You want to aim for it, but you're never going to achieve it. It can never be obtained. It can be attained for short periods of time, but never a long period. So technically speaking, looking at NASDAQ, I think we can make the clear indication now, and what we've done based off of logic, that we'll more than likely seek this high. Compared to yesterday, how it was a little bit different, how we were still a little bit in the middle, how we could have still built a bearish bias. And that's what I was doing during the AM session. That's the reason why I was really, really hesitant to do anything. And when I did execute, my bias was correct overall. I was correct on the higher prices. I was correct on everything I was looking for today. But yet I was still wrong, still took a loss, right? So that's why we don't place emphasis on being right or wrong, because overall, it doesn't really matter. It just matters how you execute. And could I have executed any better today to prevent me from taking a loss? I don't think so. And that's just part of the game. And I accept that. And, other people have different opinions, but you have to just relate this back to your own self. So at this point, technically speaking on the daily chart, we've kind of invalidated this bearish order block. We've closed basically above the mean threshold. We're disrespecting it. We dropped down into this bullish order block here, which is the down close candle. So we reacted off of what? A bullish PD array. So we reacted off of that. We expanded higher. We closed above this bearish PD array here, showing the unwillingness to drop lower. So my eye has to catch, and I have to start looking at it and saying, look, we're probably going to trade, which we traded these relative equal highs we talked about last night. We traded those, took those out. We're probably going to trade to this high here. If we get above that high, then guess what's next? Well, this high that's relative to it is probably what's next. And within that high, there's a sell side imbalance that's right underneath it. That's what I'd mark out. But overall, we would be aiming at 22,111, and that's what we'd be aiming at. Beyond that, we'll just take it from there. So the drawn liquidity right now that I'm fairly lenient on or leaning towards would be that area. At first, 21,000 basically, or 900-ish. So today, we saw this drop lower, which was price dropping down into a discount. And if you go back to the live stream, it's the whole annotation, the whole 9 yards during the whole live stream. I think I did a fantastic job of annotating every step of the way. The only part that I could not see incoming, that I probably will never be able to see incoming, is consolidation, high resistance. Price can be very low resistance, having very clean price moves, and then snap right into high resistance. And those are the hardest moments, because you can have the perfect setup, the perfect model, the perfect framework, but yet you're still stopped out. And if you look at my losses that I've had over the last week, it's basically been that. So what I journal is I said, look, I'm executing fine. My bias, everything is there. I'm executing fine. It's just the conditions of price. And guess what? I know that is a variable that changes, right? I know that that will change. It will not stay forever like that. So guess what? I stay calm and composed, because if I keep executing, nothing's wrong with the execution, nothing's wrong with the bias and what I'm looking at. All that's getting wrong is the condition. And I can't see it before it unravels. I would execute on that every single time. So I'm doing a job that's well done. And it's not me making an excuse or trying to, look at it through a different lens. I'm just speaking how I would speak to myself in a journal. I'm not calling myself dumb or stupid or I shouldn't have done that. These are things that you need to be stating in your journal, right? It's being realistic. And if I did something wrong or a mistake or I read it wrong, then I would try to look at it through the lens of encouraging, saying, look, this is how I can make an adjustment. This is what I can do differently. And this is how I can read it differently. But if I read it everything correct and just simply the condition wasn't right, then it is what it is. It may be unfair, may not be fun, may not be what you expected from trading, but that's just the reality of it. Guess what? You'll still end up profitable over time if you keep executing on it. You just have to kind of fight through those shitty moments. So again, in here, from this dealing range low to high, we dropped down into a discount and dropped back down into this previous new week opening gap, and that's where we saw this rejection higher into the PM session, attacking the buy side liquidity, which was resting above that high. If you go over to my Twitter, I'm going to try to do my best to be consistent with it, but every day I want to make some detailed annotations of the chart so you can take it home and or whatever, print it out. If you're really looking for those type of pattern recognitions, I think looking at those chart annotations will very much help. So in here you see this drop lower initially with the open taking out what? Internal sell side liquidity, which is here. That was the London session lows. And at these lows in real time, we were spotting how there is bullish SMT between ES and NQ. So there's bullish SMT in here between those two, supporting the idea of possibly looking for higher prices. And again, we were looking at the higher time frame before all of this yesterday, identifying the ideas if it did go higher and if things align, why would that reason be so? And we identified the areas that we would trade to, which it traded to perfectly, these highs up here and even the highs a little bit above it. So that all panned out. Again, preparation, when meets opportunity, you're going to be granted success, because if I didn't go into today's session without any idea as to what I should be aware of, or even looking at the idea of, well, if we do go higher, why should I be identifying that? And we identified that yesterday. So in here, I was very uncertain of this morning and as far as what price was going to really truly seek as far as the overall move. And we annotated off of the open where we dropped lower. We came back up into the sell side imbalance with this bearish breaker. And the reason why I was annotating throughout the whole session, like, hey, I don't really, I see these models. I could see where one could work and where one couldn't. Or I could see both of them working. In those situations, the reason I'm annotating it like that is because the higher time frame is unclear. I couldn't gauge whether or not today, until we fully closed, whether or not we were truly going to seek higher prices. I was a little uncertain. But when we made this drop lower, we had one more run lower, and we dropped into this discount, into this new week opening gap, and that's where you go into the 1 minute. And I'm looking at the S&T, I'm looking at the comparison between ES and NQ, and I'm gauging what they're trying to do. And that's in real time, where I ended up taking a long into this near side buy side liquidity, which is here. And that was my near side target, being generous with it, just saying, okay, well, I want to see if we can get to that. If we get to that, then I'm going to start looking for where else we can go towards. So I took my long in here. It was off a 15-second chart. You'll have to go into my live stream to see that. When I took my long in here, I wanted to see the extension up into this high over here. So I was looking for this high to be traded to. And we eventually did. Everything that I was looking for today, I was looking for this high to be traded to. If we kept on pressing higher, I would have kept it on until this high was met up here, because that was a framework of taking the trade. It wasn't based off the model, it was based off of the framework. So everything was perfect, right? And this is what I mean if I'm reviewing, and I have reviewed my last trades, this is where, again, I can't see this incoming. There's nothing within my technical knowledge of ICT that can tell me when this is going to happen. Basically, time distortion. Time distortion is a very random thing that will happen. There's some criteria to it as far as a large range day previously, but there's just nothing within the knowledge base. If I could have one thing I could learn, I wish I could learn this, when this would unfold and what time that would unfold. That way I could avoid it. But unfortunately, I don't have that. So guess what? I just have to suck it up and eat the loss. People can look at it and laugh and whatever it may be. And some people probably have, their smart remarks. Well, I knew that was going to be incoming. Sure you did. But as far as me personally, I don't know that. I will never know it. And I don't chase the, idea of trying to look for the perfection of knowing it. It is what it is. I just eat the loss and move on. So we took a long in here. I could have taken a partial here, but the framework was looking for a lot higher prices today, like we eventually unfolded. So I was eventually stopped, and eventually what I was waiting for was really the macro, and to see, okay, well, if I was stopped out and price eventually gives me another model to re-enter into price, I will do so. And that was in here where price rejected lower, took out internal sell side liquidity, rejected off the new week opening gap. And in here, all I'm seeing is we're just in high resistance. We're running internal sell side, and the reason I'm executing is based off of time within this macro. Again, within a 15-second chart, it's not going to be in here, but I was executing it here. Stop was underneath this low, and I was targeting the buy side here and possibly the high up here. And eventually I moved my stop, which was the only error that I can critically make of myself and say, look, this is what I made the error on. I'd moved my stop too early. And again, it's very hard in high resistance because you just don't know when these deep retracements are going to happen. But in here, based off of time, I had my stop here originally. As soon as we started moving higher, I moved my stop, I think just basically underneath one of these lows. And that's due to the idea is I want to reduce risk if price is moving in my favor, and if we're getting near one of my first targets, then I want to start reducing my risk. And I wasn't anticipating a deep retracement like this back into the new week opening gap. Why? Because we've already ran sell side once underneath this low. We ran it again, and within the macro, we're rejecting higher. So I'm not anticipating another run or deep retracement. Could I have kept my stop on? Yes, that would have protected me at least probably from another stop out, but in all reality, all I would have done is possibly have taken a partial here and probably would have placed my stop loss at break even. I'm just being realistic. Because if we take out this high here where a partial would be taken, my plan and order is to move my stop to break even. And eventually I would have been stopped at break even. Some people would be like, well, just leave your stop here. Well, there's plenty of instances where that happens, and then you get a stop out where it's unnecessary. So again, I can't anticipate where you're going to have this really high resistance pullback and then an extension higher. Again, when you move into very low resistance, it's very easy price action to work with. This is very difficult in here when I was executing. Very, very difficult to manage, and especially positions. And very low resistance. It's very easy. You enter in a fair value gap with the direction, order flow, moves in your favor, take partials, move stop break even, never have to worry about it. I just have been executing in times where I just get placed in high resistance and very sideways movement, and it just is what it is. Eventually, that variable will change where I'm executing in very favorable conditions, and all that will make up for these losses. So it goes back to the whole point. Every time I talk in these videos, it goes into a psychology rant because there's nothing to even talk about technically at times. I mean, I can sit here and talk technicals all day long, and that's really what the live streams are for, or more technicals. But the daily logs are really psychologically. They're to reframe your mind before you go into tomorrow and go, look, I'm all built up from today and whatever happened. It's to calm you down away from the edge of tilting or revenge trading or FOMOing, all those things that make us bad. It's for me as well. It's the reason why I do these is therapy, because it's really to reduce the emotions that are built up throughout the day. So eventually we trade off higher. We utilize this inefficiency here, and we send it off higher. Look how nice low resistance, and guess what? This is all during the PM session. If this was all happening during the AM session, guess what? It would have been a live stream, and everybody would have saw it. Would have been a great move. Everything that I was looking for today panned out. And I could sit here and criticize myself and be like, well, I should have known the PM session was going to be good. I had no fucking idea that was going to happen. Excuse my language. Let's just emphasize it. And I will never be able to tell that. And I don't really care to. I'm okay with just trading New York, and that's it. I don't care to know the other idea. So hopefully that solves some people's questions or issues over that. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. Hopefully today was somewhat insightful. And until tomorrow, good luck with your trading, everybody. Be safe.